will talk about a comparison between storm and drought outbreaks of the spruce bark beetle. And I will take the opportunity to have a presentation of myself, and then I will talk a bit about my previous research, more focused on the storm-induced outbreak that were in Sweden from 2006 to about 2011. And then I will include data also from the ongoing outbreak that we have in Sweden right now. So a presentation of myself, I am sitting, when I'm working, I'm sitting in Uppsala at SLU in the Unit of Forest Entomology and also Conservation Biology. It's a quite huge campus, but SLU is spread across Sweden, also in other countries. I consider myself as a spatial ecologist working on all kind of subjects within spatial ecology, but mostly with spatial patterns, landscape ecology, and population dynamics. I started to work with the bark beetle, the spruce bark beetle, after the storm Gudrun in Sweden as a field assistant. And I also defended my thesis in 2015, working on risk maps of the spruce bark beetle. And continue with a postdoc up in the north, in Umeå, working on several different species of bark beetles and forest restorations as prescribed burnings and gap cuts and so on. I was a bit sidetracked, worked at Uppsala University for 2 years with fungal disease on amphibians, and then I'm back at the Department of Ecology at SLU in Uppsala, again working with landscape impact and general forest biodiversity. And my fourth postdoc was more about bark beetles again and other species of saprosilic beetles and non-invasive tree species. But now I'm back on track, working again exclusively with the spruce bark beetle and the ongoing outbreak. I'm working with the fine-scale dynamics. It's one project, and my largest project is about conservation areas like nature reserves and the role of and the outbreak dynamics and effects of conservation areas. But this talk I will focus on another project, which is about a comparison with the storm outbreak and the drought-induced outbreak. So we had about 6 outbreaks during the last 100 years. Before the 1960, it was quite hard we don't have the data of how much trees that were killed. But as you can see, the current outbreak that started because of the drought in 2018 is the largest outbreak ever recorded in Sweden. And most of them previously were caused by storms, and a few, and the current one were caused by a drought. And as you know, the storm-induced outbreaks are caused because there is a lot of wind-felled trees that have very little defense, and that's why the spruce bark beetle can build up a huge population density and be a large number, so they can kill healthy trees. And the drought-induced outbreaks are caused by the stress of the spruce trees. So it's these two I will focus on in this presentation, and I will start with some studies I did during my PhD. And this is an example of infestation patterns after the storm. And we were studying an area of 130,000 hectares. And as you can see on the right hand, most of the infestation spots were small, 5 to 10 trees. They were more in clusters. If you compare with Finland from the previous talk, they were not as in infestation spots. So the result from this study was that the volume of spruce is the most important factor that influence the infestations of the spruce bark beetle. And we also did these boosted regression trees, as Pivovar showed you before lunch. And you can see that about 200 cubic meter of spruce were the highest risk of attacks during this outbreak. And we conducted some risk maps across years. And these were validated by these rock curves, and it was quite good. We had another area also for validation. So it was a quite good match of our risk maps. In another study, we just looked at the colonizations of infestations, and also in pixel sizes of 100 times 100 meters. And we could see that, again, spruce volume was the most important factor for colonizations and also for extinctions, where they did not continue within the same pixel the year after. But also the local population size was quite important for extinctions of infestation spots. And now we will focus more on the drought outbreak. And we will work in the future with this area, where we will use satellite data for see how conservation areas is affecting the population dynamics at different spatial scales. So this is a project I'm doing together with Widening and Eva. So here is some satellite data of conservation areas. You can see that there is a nature reserve up in the right corner that is quite highly infested. But that is this project, and I will not talk about this so much because we are still working on validating the satellite data, and we are working on a paper about this validation. So meanwhile, I'm working on this project with different, to compare the drought and the storm-induced outbreak. And we will look further into this project. So as we had a storm-induced outbreak in 2005, and we had this drought-induced outbreak from 2018, these two that I have showed previously. I have some data from my PhD studies, and they were found by a helicopter and classified in 4 different infestation spot sizes. And we also have information from the current outbreak and the same outbreak phases, like the first year of tree killing. And they were from harvesting machines. So if you remember the previous slide about the infestation spot sizes, again, we can see also from this drought-induced outbreak, we can see that the highest proportion of infestation spots were small and widespread across the region. And very few were larger than 50 trees that were clustered. So to compare the drought-induced outbreak and the storm-induced outbreak, we want to know how. So I did a logistic regression with the storm and compare these different kind of forest conditions like spruce volume and spruce height, clear cuts. I also included nature reserves and ground moisture that were based on the terrestrial shape of the land, or how. And the landscapes was the effect of landscapes were within a moving wind of 2 times 2 kilometers, which is approximate the radius of 1 kilometer. And I did 2 different models for local factors and landscape factors. And what we found was that we have, here you have the estimates and the confidence intervals. So when they are on the left side, they were more affected by the drought, and if they are on the right hand, they were more affected, or the infestations were more affected on the storm-induced outbreak. So, for example, we found that spruce volumes in the landscape, they were more important for the storm-induced outbreak. We could also see at both local scale and at landscape scale, the ground moisture was more important for the storm outbreak. And spruce volumes were more important at a local scale for the drought outbreaks. So there is a difference between the storm and drought outbreaks. Another set of models is where I can compare the infestation spot sizes from the drought and the storm. And I summed up the number of killed trees within each pixel. Also, I worked with the pixel size of 100 times 100 meters. And then I did GLM models with the storm and another GLM model with the drought. And then you have the infestation spot size and all these forest conditions. We also included SPAY, as you can see here. And SPAY is a kind of a drought index, which were included in these models. It should not be a line across these numbers. They should be unlined. So from these infestation spot sizes, we also conducted one model for local effects and one model for landscape effects. And here you can see that the gray bars are from the storm and the darker bars are from the drought. So this is infestation sizes. So we found that also that the ground, when we look at infestation spot sizes, the ground moisture had a stronger effect from the drought outbreak. And we also found that the drought index, like in the first year, was more important for the storm outbreak here. And spruce volume in the landscape were positively affected by the storm, the infestation spot sizes, but negatively affected when we did the models on the drought outbreak, as you can see here. So if we look at the occurrence of infestation spots and also the infestation sizes, you can see some matching results. You can see the spruce height, they increased both the occurrence and the size of the drought infestations. We also found that spruce volume in the landscape, they increase both the occurrence and size of the storm infestations. And nature reserves in the landscape also were affecting the infestation spot sizes from the storm-induced outbreak, but not from the drought-induced outbreak, which was quite interesting. And clear cuts in the landscape were influencing the drought outbreak more, both the occurrence and the infestation spot size. So to conclude this a bit, the difference in the spatial distribution of susceptible trees, they differed between the storm and the drought. As height were more important for drought, it could be that when you have a large-scale drought, the spruce beetle can actually choose the best trees, the tallest trees, where they can reproduce better. With the spruce volume in the landscape, the spruce volume is not really correlated with the tree size, because spruce volume is more like the monoculture of Norway spruce in the landscape. So we can think that the pure stands of Norway spruce, they increase also the risk for storm felling. This could be explaining the results. And the area of nature reserves in the landscape, they were exclusively important for the storm-induced outbreak. And yeah, it's hard to understand the reason behind this, but during after the storm-induced outbreak, there was many windfell trees remained in the nature reserves, and it's not really the case for this outbreak, because they can also harvest the trees nowadays from nature reserves when they are attacked for some of the nature reserves. And also we had an effect of the area of clear cuts in the landscape, and it was more important for the drought-induced outbreak. And I don't know why really, but the drought was initiated in May in 2018, and these trees surrounding the clear cuts could be the first choice of the bark beetles, as these trees are sun exposed and more stressed. But I mean, during the storm-induced outbreak, it could be that they were more affected by where the windfell trees were. And then we can have a look at this drought index I talked about, this SPEI. It's including both the temperature and precipitation, and we make comparison between the year 2000 and 2020. And if they have a minus value, then they are more dry, and if they have a positive value, they are more wet. And you can see that the year 2018 was really dry because of the drought, of course. 2006 was also quite dry, but not as dry as in 2018. In the second year of the outbreaks, they were more normal, or even wetter than or colder than normal. Yes. So this is quite. I mean, if there is more drought, of course, the infestation spot sizes increases both for both outbreaks. But the strange thing is that when it was less drought, they increased also infestation spot size, and I can't really explain this. But this is very strange that wetter areas should increase infestation spot sizes in the second year. But from the harvesting data that I have from 2019, one can assume that data before August, they were actually from 2018, because as many of you know that these trees are not really later in the summer or in the autumn. So I tried to split the data from just the trees from 2018, but still I have the same result, which is very strange, that I have the infestation sizes from 2018 and they are affected by the drought index in 2019, which is quite strange. So it has to be some kind of false causality or some kind of other variable that have a covariation with this. But this needs some further investigation, what's happening here. I also tried with 2019, and of course the trees in 2019 can still be affected by the drought in 2018. It can be a lag effect that several studies has been showed. I also try to see where the infestation spot sizes were from the drought outbreak, how these were affected by the previous outbreak from the storm. And what I found on the left hand here, you can see that there was a negative correlation with the infestation spot sizes at smaller scales. If I have a moving window that is 300 meters in size, within 300 meters, there was a negative correlation between the trees that were killed from the storm outbreak if you compare with the trees that were killed in the drought after the drought. So it could be either that the trees it could be some kind of vaccination effect, but I don't believe in that really on this scale, and not so long time after the storm outbreak. So I also used spruce volume as an offset, and then we do not have these negative effects anymore, but more like a positive effect. But the conclusion from this is that if you have a lot of trees in the storm outbreaks, there are not so many susceptible trees left for the drought outbreak. So this is the effect of the negative correlations at smaller scales on the left hand. And there is a paper about this, how bark beetles from one outbreak can dampen future outbreaks. So to conclude, this is that the storm was affected by the spruce in the landscape and also nature reserves in the landscape. And for the drought outbreak, they have is more affected by the local tree height more than storms, and also the clear cuts in the landscape. So there are different drivers of these two kinds of outbreaks. And this is quite important when we should study the spatial patterns and use the interpretation of satellite data after different triggers. So I think this is what I have. Thank you.